Hey there, students. Mr. Harrison here from class. I want to go over the particle theory notes real quickly with you in video form. There's a couple things you need to know about the particle theory of matter, and they're all bulleted up here. So let's start with this one. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space, which means takes up. And if you remember from earlier this year, occupying space is the definition of volume. So basically, matter is anything that has mass and has volume. So it's got to have some sort of mass, which on Earth we know as weight, but it's not the same thing. And it has to have some volume, which means it takes up space. Second bullet is that all matter is made up of small particles called atoms. You got to know that name, atoms. Then the third bullet is that all matter is made up of tiny particles and they're in constant motion. So not only are there little particles called atoms, but they are in constant motion, including down here in a solid. Particles are in motion. And then matter can exist as a solid, a liquid, a gas, or a plasma. There's also a very, very cold version that you don't need to know. It's called Bose-Einstein condensate, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. And then the last point is that an atom is the smallest part of an element that can exist as that element. In other words, if you try to break it down further, like picture some matter and you cut it in half and then you take half of that and cut it in half again, take half of that and cut it in half again, repeat that over and over again. There's going to be a point where you can't cut it in half anymore without it becoming something different. So the atom is that point where you can't cut it apart anymore without it changing into something different. So that basically what that's saying is if anything smaller than the point of an atom, if we try to cut it in half, it's no longer going to be that thing. It's going to be something different. All right, so here's our three phases. We left plasmas out here, but they're basically a supercharged, electrically charged, highly energetic gas. So real quick, a solid has a fixed shape and a fixed volume, and it's rigid, which means it's not really moving a ton, but these particles here are moving. They're vibrating against each other. Then if you warm that solid up, it becomes a liquid, and that liquid is no longer rigid shape, and it doesn't have a fixed shape. It takes the shape of whatever container it's in, but it does have a fixed volume. That's why we can take a measuring cup and measure something out and pour it in a different container. It's still that amount of volume. It's just not the same shape. It takes the shape of the new container. Then you've got a gas, which is what happens if you heat up a liquid. It's also not rigid. It has no fixed shape and it has no fixed volume. So look at these bottom things. You can't squash or squish a solid into a smaller area. A liquid's the same. You can't squish it. But a gas, you can squish it to fit in a different space because gas doesn't have a fixed volume. All right, so this is a little bit tricky, but these two statements show that someone understands what the particle theory of matter states. So these are example statements. These are non-example. These ones don't show understanding of this. So one example statement: the light from a window is not made of matter because I cannot measure its mass. So that goes up to right here. It has something that has mass. Since light doesn't have mass, you can't measure its mass, and therefore it is not matter. So you need to be able to measure its mass. Second example statement. This is a true statement. My pen is made of matter because it occupies space and has a mass of 8 grams. Well, that's, again, this first bullet point. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. And that fits both of those criteria. Then here's two non-examples. The water in my cup is not made of matter because it can change shape. Well, there's nothing about the particle theory up here that says that mass can't change shape. As a matter of fact, if it's a liquid, it should be able to change shape because it doesn't have a fixed shape. So that's a non-example. This statement does not indicate whether it's matter or not. Second non-example, the air in the classroom is not matter because I cannot see it. Well, some matter you can't see, like gases, they're still matter, but you can't see them. So this statement does not prove whether or not it's matter. That's what a non-example means. So go ahead and move to the questions that are attached to these notes and answer them carefully so that you get them all right.